marriage, the most sacred of relationships, yet time and life make it fragile. Love, trust, respect, and desire, all elements of a successful marriage. Yet so many of us along the way forget. We lead busy lives. We go through changes, big and small. We build walls to protect ourselves. It does not have to be this way. There are clear and exciting ways to bring your marriage and life back on track. Welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast with Stuart Fensterheim.
Hello, and welcome to the Couples Expert Podcast. This is Stuart Fensterheim, the Couples Expert. And we're here again for another edition of this podcast, which is about connections, the connections between you and your partner. Today's podcast, though, I'm going to divert a bit and talk about connections with family. And not just the connections with your parents, because people speak all the time about that, but more about connections with siblings. And I think it's an interesting concept because so often we forget that when we're in a family, our brothers and our sisters are the most important people to us. Sometimes as we get older, even more important than our parents. And yet what occurs a lot of the time, and really sad, is I hear stories of people who come into my office who are struggling in their relationship and also have lost contact with their brothers and sisters, half-brothers, half-sisters. And what people forget is connection is about connecting, and that we can't have a connected relationship with someone in our lives when there are parts of us that are missing, and that there's a void when you come from a family and you've grown up and you've spent time and energy on living your life with your parents, with all the stresses that sometimes come with family relationships. And what often happens is people fall apart, their relationships struggle. And when we begin to look back and we begin to look at some of the areas that may have led to the problems, and so often when I do an individual history on someone, and I do that because I want to talk about some of the problems and some of the things that may be getting in the way of you and your partner feeling close, quite often it goes back to our family relationships. That shouldn't be a surprise. And what happens is I have to begin to talk to people about where is some of the emptiness in their lives. And so often the emptiness has to do with brothers and sisters that they've lost contact with, parents who they view as toxic and they've stopped connecting with, and they've stopped trying to have a relationship with. And if you come from a relationship yourself in which you have a very full, active, loving relationship with your family, and your partner has a very different kind of relationship, how does that difference impact the two of you? I would suggest that it impacts you a great deal. You know, one of the things that we know is that we don't have control who our siblings are. When we come from a family and a mom and a dad who have children, boom, you now have a sibling. And if we come from a blended family, what happens is are choices that get made with two people who find each other who might have a child. In my family in particular, we have a yours, mine, and ours. We have siblings. I have siblings with my biological parents, my mom and my dad, who had 3 children. Each one of them, when my parents divorced, married people who had children from their previous marriage. So altogether, we have a very large extended family, which includes half-brothers and half-sisters, full brothers and full sisters, step-brothers and step-sisters, and how we've sort of decided to live our life in our family is with no differentiation. And so often what happens is people begin to talk about their brothers and sisters with these labels. And I don't think it's a good idea personally. I believe that love is love. And if we have a family in which you have a family connection on some level, that is your brother or sister. Now, when we grow up, we have adult relationships. Sometimes what happens is people lose touch with one another. My family, for example, lives all over the country, and it is not unusual for me to not have ongoing contact with my siblings for a period of time, maybe even a month. But there are so many people out there that don't have contact for years. And then sometimes I hear these horrible stories where people maybe had business dealings and then they decided they're not going to stay in touch, or they're pissed off at their brother or their sister and they think their sister is mad at them for this, that, or the other, but they aren't talking about it. When we talk about living a full, centered life in which we feel good about ourselves and we don't have things that get in the way of us having a relationship with a partner, love is about inclusion. Love is about making sure that your relationship with your family are in good shape. And because our siblings are really our primary friendships. I'm going to be doing a podcast shortly, really defining what is a true friend. How does friendship grow in a marriage and a relationship, then grows to romance and passion. And unless you have healthy dealings with your friends that are in your primary group, which is your family, which is your brother, which is your sister, that relationship is where we work out all the things that we need to work out on how do we deal with conflict. What does a repair look like? What is a relationship that is working? What's that feel like? What does it feel like to have someone in your life that you know you can always count on? And humor. What does humor look like? How do we deal with our partners or in our friendships and our siblings with degrading humor? With putting people down? Or is that humor always done with two people on the same level, feeling good about each other, and it's humor that isn't about having people feel bad about themselves or their life? And when we get into an argument as a kid, what's the physical fighting about? You know, I hear people talking about stories about their sons and their sons really ramming and punching each other and hurting each other. And I hear the expression sometimes, well, boys will be boys. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean boys are always going to hurt and that everything gets dealt with by physical force? Does it mean that if we grow up in an environment and the family culture is that kids can punch and hurt one another and it's just acceptable, how does that then translate to when they have a relationship with a woman? Or if two people have a same-sex relationship, what's that relationship like? Is it filled with violence and that's just acceptable? Boys will be boys? I would hope not. I would hope as a family, as a culture, as a society, we send the message that when you're in a relationship and you have a sibling, kindness, good nature, generosity, these are the things that are valued. Not boys will be boys, let's just sock each other. What about name calling? Is that acceptable in the family? If you live in a family culture in which name calling between kids is just overlooked, or do we give consequences to little kids when they say things that are mean? Do we overlook it sometimes? And is there a do-over? Do we allow do-overs? You see, I really believe that when we start talking about this and we start talking about family environments, how we raise our children really is about teaching them from the time that they're infants what a relationship is like. What's a relationship like with your sibling? What's a relationship like with friends? What's a relationship like with grandparents? Do you, as the parents, talk negatively about your siblings, which, by the way, are their uncles and aunts? And how does that translate to how they treat people in their life and their siblings? How your partner now views you as someone they love. Can they count on you in a way of always being treated positively, lovingly? If you're someone that has gotten into an argument with your sibling and have stopped all contact, have cut them off, does that build security in your marriage? Does your partner now see you as someone that you can wipe people off the face of this earth? And what about me? If I make you upset, will you do the same for me? And how do you as the partner say, it will be different with you because you're my wife or you're my husband? I would suggest there's no way you can assure your partner that if you have done that and don't work on repairing those relationships. If we hold a grudge, if we refuse to compromise, what does that say about us and the people we are? Check out my Facebook page, the Couples Expert Facebook page. You'll see I've had photos about a trip that I recently took to New Orleans. It was such a blast. Now, I turned 62 this year, and my brothers are in their mid to late 60s, and we always were best friends. It was the three of us, and then there were two more that came on later because my mom and stepdad had two children. But I came up with this crazy idea, and I loved the fact that it happened, and I loved that all of us came together and decided to do this as me and my two brothers, the original set. My dad and mom had three boys, and we went to New Orleans for a jazz, food, eating all the things our wives don't want us to eat trip, and we spent an entire weekend together, just the three of us. And what was so wonderful about this, number one, there was a feel of we were the three kids again, including some of the fights that we used to have. And my older brother trying to sort of run things, my younger brother, who's, a lawyer now, trying to be sort of negotiate all of this. And me, there's the middle child, having all the middle child syndromes. And it just flowed so nicely. We love each other so much, but yet our lives are so hectic. My brother is a pretty well-versed lawyer, corporate lawyer out of Washington, D.C., Maryland area. My older brother has a consulting firm, environmental health, and they're all so busy and quite successful, which means their time is limited. And all three of us made the decision to stop for a moment to smell the roses. We got a suite at a hotel and just spent a couple of days just being together, letting each other know that we matter to each other and we love spending time together. It was so wonderful and so touching. And as a result of that, it sent a clear message to me, and I hope to them, that they matter to me enough to really make that relationship a priority.
Now, that doesn't minimize the importance of my half-brothers and stepbrothers and stepsisters, but I wanted it to be a special thing for just the three of us, because life is short. And by doing this, it's sort of one of these like bucket list things for me. I was able to know that the three of us made each other important. How often do we do that with our siblings? Not as much as we need to. And it's really interesting for me because I had this experience, and then a couple of years ago, I had a different one. And this was an incredible one. You see, I have a stepsister, and talk about siblings and family conflicts and things like that, we lost touch. There was a lot of reasons. There was some relationship challenges between her and my stepdad, and we lost touch. And then I was doing my EFT couples counseling training, and I received this email from this woman. And what it said was, "Are you Stuart Fensterheim, the brother of Bob and David Fensterheim?" And those are my two brothers. And she identified herself and said, "I am your stepsister, and it's nice to sort of talk with you." And you know, it brought me to tears. I was so surprised of my own personal reaction to this. What I didn't realize, and what this really showed me, is this was a void in me. There was an emptiness. I had a relationship with her when I was quite young. And it wasn't there. It went away. And it has impacted me in such an unknown way. I didn't even realize how much it had impacted me. I thought it was, she was from a different family. Yes, we did visits, but why would this impact me so much? Because if we're authentic with ourselves, if we truly let ourselves be human and who we are, we need, not want, need emotional connections with the people in our family, regardless of how they got there. And unless you allow yourself to be impacted, if you have things like relationships that go away and disappear, there's a part of you, I believe, that's missing. And the exciting news about this, when this occurred, I was able to reconnect with this woman, and the two of us maintained an ongoing relationship since that day. Maybe not on a regular basis. Maybe we don't talk every week or every month. Maybe we'll only talk once a year. Maybe it'll only be a Christmas or a Hanukkah card. But that experience of reaching out and the two of us being able to then reconnect, have a conversation about what occurred in our family, and repair some of the relationships, and share my life, share my successes, share my struggles, share my wife, share my children with a family member, has allowed me to feel whole. And I believe has made me a stronger person, a stronger man, and a better therapist. Because what I talk about now that I never, ever, ever did before in my assessments is about those relationships. Because those relationships have a value to you to feel like you're whole. And without it, we don't. When you don't have a good relationship with your siblings, it impacts your partner. There's no question in my mind that it does that. And it also allows you, when you have those relationships and your wife and your husband has an extended family, that allows you to really establish that relationship. Some of you know, and I think most of you do by now, that my marriage is not my first marriage. I was married before. And the relationships that I developed with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law in that marriage that didn't work, the marriage was not what I would define as successful because we ended up divorced, but I was able to maintain relationships with my brother-in-law. And what comes from that is a positive perspective of family, and that my wife and my ex-wife accepting that as part of my life, part of my family, allows me to maintain relationships with my brother-in-law. That's so positive. And my children, who their uncle, which is my brother-in-law, feel positive about me and my ex-wife being good with having those relationships. Sometimes you don't maintain a relationship as much with my father-in-law or mother-in-law, but what I hope they know is that my love for them is still real. I feel positive about them. It becomes more complicated because of the divorce, but it's less complicated with my brother-in-law. And that's also true that there was a tragedy in the family. And when this tragedy occurred, my grief was no less real. And there's a sadness when something bad happens with my ex-wife's family that I experience. And I'm able to feel that pain, allow myself to feel that pain, share that pain with my wife today, and she understands. She understands because the two of us have a strong commitment to family. And that family commitment includes my siblings from marriage and previous marriages too. And because we have that common thread, that common understanding, love is what's filled up in our family. Love is what it's about. Love will take you to so many high highs. And the love for your wife, the love for your husband, the love for your siblings, the love for your extended family creates a dynamic for the two of you, husband and wife, partner and partner, same sex, different sex, that allows the two of you to recognize that your goal in your relationship is making sure every single person that you come across understands how important they are to you. We have only one life to live, and we choose to live it with love being the central theme. And how wonderful is that? So here's my advice. If you have a relationship with your partner that means something to you, think about the importance of repairing whatever problems there may be with your siblings. Recognize that we only have one life to live. And the last thing we want to do on your last day on earth is have regret. The last thing you want to do is have something that gets in the way of you and your partner feeling close to one another, feeling that something has been missing that has not allowed the two of you to feel as close to each other be the one to reach out. It's possible that you probably, if it's been many years, don't even remember what the fight's about anyway. The main thing is to come to the table together and put it behind you. Recognize that the importance of maintaining these connections. And the one piece I did forget about, what's also missing for kids, if you and your siblings aren't having ongoing relationships, is there members of their family out there that they may not have even ever met? Their cousins. How important is that? You want to share the moments and the memories that you guys have. Don't let this aspect of your family, of your background, of your family upbringing, the sadness that comes from those breakdowns. I believe that there's no question in this couple's expert mind that unless you have these relationships that have been worked through, at least the effort has to be there. It will impact the two of you, and your relationship with your partner won't be as strong and as powerful as it can be. I know there's people out there that may disagree with this, but I believe part of what you can do to make your marriage and your relationship more powerful is making sure that the relationships in your family, in your life, are as powerful and as close as they can be, because it will only have a positive impact on the two of you. I want to thank you for joining me again this week, and we'll see you next time with my guest, Brian Mayer, who's going to be talking about marriage the second time around and how to make that your last relationship and keeping the connection with a remarriage in your life. Take care, and we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. This episode has ended, but your journey continues. Head over to www.thecouplesexperts.com to access all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, as well as bonus content exclusive to podcast listeners. Enjoyed this episode? Why not hit subscribe now and never miss an episode?